Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm a volunteer with Blessman International, and I would like to show you how to make our bases. The first part of the base that we need to make are the bands. Using a 5-inch square, and you would need 2 of these, identical out of the same piece of fabric, preferably, and you would just fold each one in half. Taking that to your sewing machine, you would sew a 1/4-inch seam, back tacking at the beginning and the end of each piece. Then you would turn them inside out, pressing them, and then sewing an 1/8 inch top stitch down the folded edge and down the sewn edge. So that's an 1/8 inch top stitch down each one. Now, I like to make a lot of bands at the same time just to get them done. So I often will buy a 1/2 yard of fabric and just cut them, and I would wash and iron and cut it in 5-inch strips. Now this color is not a good band color, but it's just a piece of fabric I had laying around that I'm using for this. Again, 100% cotton, nice woven cotton. Fold your 5-inch piece in half. I take it to my serger and I serge a 1/4-inch seam line down the side of the fabric. Then turning it inside out, I would press it and sew 1/8 inch top stitching down the fold edge and 1/8 inch top stitching down the sewn edge. Then I would take this to my cutting board and my rotary cutter, and I would cut these in 5-inch pieces, giving me the 5-inch bands. On the bands, we prefer to use the 2 bands be out of the same fabric. Sometimes you'll have design differences, but if they're out of the same fabric, that's okay. Then to make the base, what you'll need are 2 pieces of fabric, each cut 9 by 11 inches. 2 9 by 11s. You'll need 2 bands, and you'll need 1 piece of PUL cut 1.5 inches by 9. Excuse me, 10.5 inches by 9. You do not have to remember these. These are all included in the patterns that are available on the Blessman International website, and I'll give you that information at the end. Of your 2 pieces of 9 by 11 fabric, pick the one that is the most color stain resistant. And I'm going to say of these 2 pieces, this dark brown is going to be the piece that I want to use. Okay, this is the base of my base. Using my favorite tool, I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch down. That allows me a 1/2 inch for the top of the band and a 1/4 inch for the seam allowance. So I'm going to put my 0 side right against the edge of my fabric and bring it up to 3/4 of an inch. And so I've got 0 to 9, 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to take my pocket with the sewn set edge down, and I'm going to push it up against my measure between the 2 and the 7. So that gives me 2 inches, 5 inches, 2 inches. I use painter's tape, and I like to use a long piece because I think it holds it in place better, it stays better. And I'm going to do that on both sides of my base. I choose to use painter's tape. I don't think it's quite as gummy as masking tape, especially if I don't get right back to a project or I do a bunch of these, to sit down and sew at a later date, or if I would happen to have them in my car, traveling or something. I don't think it gets as gummy. So I prefer painter's tape. It's not very expensive, and you can see I just use a few inches. Now I've had a lot of questions on the directions. It talks about the wrong side. This is going to be the bottom. This is going to be the bottom, the back side of our base. So I'm going to lay, this is the base of my base, this side with the pockets. I'm going to lay my back side down with right sides together. So I'm putting right sides together, lining up my corners. And when that is completed, and I've got it all matched up, I'm going to grab it, holding my bands, and flip it over. And I still, you can see I've got clear edges. Now, the next step is PUL. We haven't used PUL, it's polyurethane laminate. And when it comes, it's got a shiny side and a dull side. This is a piece I marked one night, and I accidentally marked it on the polished, on the shiny side. So I have put an X through it. My team often will cut a whole bolt of this in a meeting, and then my non-sewers will sit and they will mark using our template, which I will explain later how these are available to you. Using the template, center it. It should match top to bottom, okay, but center it in the middle, and then you just simply trace around it. My team will trace the whole batch, and so when my sewers come in to pick up bases to make, these are already marked for them. Okay, and I'm going to move this out of the way and go to you would then take your pieces and iron down on one end only, 1/4 of an inch on both sides. Lay that down, and this is my base, and this is going to be my back side. So I'm going to, on top of this, I have flipped it, and now I'm placing my correctly marked PUL, and I'm going to center it 1/4, and I am going to tuck this top right up against that fold. And then I am going to fold this over, and I'm using clips because you're working with PUL, and we don't want to poke holes because the PUL is waterproof, and we don't want to lose that feature. Okay, then I'm going to take, I've got my 1/4 inch clipped. I'm going to put pins, and I'm putting pins outside of the base itself. This will be the remnants that'll get thrown away. So I am pinning it, and I'm pinning it the direction I'm going to be sewing, like this. So I've got my pins going that direction. So now that you've got this clipped down and you've got this, you're now going to sew on the lines. Now, if you have never sewn on the lines, a great idea is to take a piece of plain white paper, trace this on it, or do that, or make some copies, and practice sewing without a thread in your sewing machine, and just sew along to get used to turning it for the curves and everything. Another thing, if you're not used to sewing on lines, just lined paper, learning how to pay attention to where you're sewing and not your selvage edge. Okay, so I start on the right side and back stitch that well, and then just sew along. You come down to 1/4 inch from the bottom, and you sew across the bottom. Depending on your 1/4 inch and how this all lies, you may or may not catch the PUL down here, and that is okay. But sew across the bottom and then sew back up. And you can see my pins. I'm going to sew with my pins so that they're not sticking me. When you get done with this, you can remove your pins and you trim. Trim about 1/4 of an inch on both edges. And this is the bottom. This is the open up here. You will want to, as you're trimming in the curves, trim closer to 1/8 of an inch so that it turns and it lays nicer. Also trim the corners at the bottom. So the tops should be folded down. The bottom, you'll have to trim the corners 1/4 of an inch and about 1/8 inch around the curves. And then once that's done, again, back stitch on both the beginning and the end. Then you will reach in to your base and you will take this is your underside, and this is going to be your PUL, your top side and your pockets, and you're going to turn it inside out. Once you get it turned inside out, you will take a tool like this or maybe a pair of scissors, and you will go in again between the underside and the PUL, and you will just kind of carefully push that out. You'll go up to your corners, and again, working your corners carefully, push the corners out. And again, be very careful. Don't push too hard, too sharp. You can use my wiggle method if you need to get some of that out. And then I highly recommend, okay, at that point, remove your tape. You no longer need the tape. Everything is sewn in place. Well, if I can remove the tape, it doesn't want to come up today. There we go. Now, finger press this really well. There's a little thread hanging. Always clip those little threads when you see them. Tucking. One of these should wrap over the PUL, and you should be able to fold it up like that. Now, using clips, don't pin here because you can pin in the seam allowance, but I highly discourage that. I say use the clips. These are quilting clips. I purchased, these are very, very reasonable, 100 of these on Amazon for less than $10. And I use them all the time now in all of my sewing projects. And I don't tend to prick my fingers nearly like I used to using scissors, or using pins, I should say. Okay, after you have this all finger pressed out, take it to your ironing board and iron it. Iron it on the back side to get it down, turn it over, iron it on the front side. My pins are still in this just to hold it, but take those off and iron it down really well. Now, when I take it back to my sewing machine, I do like to keep a clip on it just to hold it in place. Take it back to your sewing machine, and you can choose where to start. I often, it's going to sound a little strange, but there is a method to my madness. You can start at the open top. I tend to start at the bottom, and I start right in the middle here, and I'll stitch it down. And as I sew around an 1/8 of an inch top stitch and a scant 1/8 of an inch, just as tight as you can get it without going off. Come to your corner, turn it, and you're going to go over your bands. At the opening of each band, I want you to back stitch 3 times. I want you to back stitch over that. Sew down, again, you're at an 1/8 of an inch, back stitch. Sew around the curve, back stitch, back stitch. Come up here and with your clips tight and do your 1/8 of an inch, making sure that your fabric is still folded over your PUL so you can't see it. Come across here, back stitch, 1/8 of an inch, back stitch, get back here, and then I back stitch where I finish. I don't have to back stitch where I start that way. So when you get done, it's nice, it's sharp, it's completed, it's nicely done. You've back stitched here. The next step is to put snaps on it. Now, we highly recommend cam snaps, the size 20. They have a lot of color choices. A lot of color choices. We tend to select, like this one happens to have black on it. Blue is a great color. We tend to use more neutral colors. We don't match our snaps to our fabric or anything. In this case, it happened to work because we were running black that day. But we don't buy packs of 10. We buy packs of 500 at a time. This is a hand device, and you just put your snap in there, the correct one, any outie, male, female, stud, insert. There's all sorts of different names for them. But you make them, you put them, so here's a finished part on this side, and the other smooth side is on the other side, so that when you turn it around, they snap like that. That's really important. These are harder to take out than they are to put in, so be sure you're careful when you put them in. The hand one is okay, it works fine. However, we have the big commercial one, and this one you stand up to use it, and there's special pieces that you put in, one for the male piece and one for the female, or one for the stud and one for the insert. And you just put it in there, and if you need to, it might take two people to hold this. You might have somebody just hold this while the other person brings it down. I've done it enough I can almost do it myself. And then they get in. All of our products at the end of our directions have quality control check. This is really important. We want to have quality products. Here in Iowa, we like to say we're sewing for the blue ribbon. We want to take this to the state fair, and we want to earn a blue ribbon on it. Another thing is you're sewing this as a gift. When you give away something or you gift somebody something, don't you want it to be your best work and quality? You want it to look good. So that's what we aim for, is quality product that's going to last these girls. It's going to work to their benefit. One of the steps in quality control is snapping. My snappers snap and unsnap these at least 3 times when they do it to make sure they work well. The next step with our template that got buried, you can lay the template over the top of this product, and it should be pretty close, because our sewing line is the outside edge, because the tracing line is our sewing line, it's our outside edge. Our bands will be about 1/2 inch down. They fit in this slot, and then there's 5 inches between the bands, and again another 1/2 inch. Our snaps are pretty close to a 1/2 inch in the center of the checkpoint. Okay, these tools, these templates are available through Blessman International for teams forming. If you want to, I will give you information how to contact me to get them. At this time, we have a limited amount, but we are sending them out to those teams sewing for us. And this way we're all uniform. On the pattern, the printed pattern PDF on the website, there is a pattern that's there, but we have discovered by people printing it and trying to recreate it, we're getting all different sizes because printers aren't reading it right, or it's been copied or some other thing, and it's not the right size. It's too small. The inserts, it's too narrow. The inserts won't fit in here. Different things like that. So the best bet is to get your hands on a template that is the accurate size. All of our product guides, our training videos, our fabric selection videos, our guidelines to the product are available on blessmaninternational.org website. You can go to their website. You can learn more about Blessman and check out their Girls Empowerment section, where you will find our patterns and our videos. If you have specific questions that you'd like it answered, you may contact me, Cindy, at blessmaninternational.org. That's Cindy at blessmaninternational.org. I'd be happy to answer your questions or steer you in the right direction. If you're interested in getting these templates, you can contact Blessman International, or you can contact me, and we'll see what we can do for you. Again, it's been a pleasure. Have a great day, and thank you.